And lastly, those same people, when the going gets rough, those are people you could turn to. Because a leader, it's interesting. When I was in graduate school for the first master's, and we talked about the loneliest position in the world. I was actually in the master's for teaching at that time. So they said the classroom teacher is the loneliest person in the world, or loneliest profession. Why? Because she goes into her classroom. That's what back in the day where she closes the door. She's there with 30 kids, 20 kids, whatever the number is, but she's there with kids all day. And so she doesn't have peers to connect with. So I often say that might be true, but I think that the loneliest position in the world could be the school principal or somebody else in a leadership position. Because oftentimes there you feel really isolated, right? Can I talk to my team? Can I sort of bare my soul to somebody within my team and share my concerns? Can I turn to the person above me? All right, a little bit of a risky proposition sometimes. Do I have enough equity in that relationship? Sometimes the best person to turn to is somebody in a comparable position that's sharing your pain, so to speak, that understands what you're dealing with. And you could turn to them without any concern about implications for you and hopefully to glean meaningful nuggets from what happened. There's a story about a reporter comes to a CEO, very successful person, and said, "Sir, how'd you do it? How'd you get to be so wealthy?" He said, "Oh, real easy, 2 words, good decisions." So the reporter said, "Well, that's great, but how did you come to make good decisions?" He said, 1 word. 2 words. 1 second, I'm getting this right. Yes, 1 word, experience. Well, how do you learn the experience? 2 words, bad decisions. So the point of a leadership training is to get you to make as few bad decisions as you can so that you could still be in place to eventually make good decisions. In essence, that's what it is. But having those peers that you could turn to, learning from their experience, making those connections is critical. And so I want to leave you off with the following story and the following idea. Oftentimes we look elsewhere, we look at books and YouTube videos and lectures and all these things for the silver bullet, so to speak, about leadership. If I only knew what so-and-so knows about leadership, I'd be a great leader. But I want to remind you that the greatest tools towards your leadership growth lie within you. And here's the story. There was a poor man living in some rural area, maybe a few hundred years ago, really, really poor, had barely any food to feed his family, worked hard all day, but just didn't have the resources and didn't know how he was going to continue to live. He goes to sleep at night and he has this dream. And the dream was that in the king's palace, not that far away, buried underneath the foundation of the palace, right next to the moat, was a huge treasure. And if he could only access that treasure, he'd be wealthy for life. He dismisses the dream, thinks nothing of it, but he has it again and again and again. And eventually he says to his wife, "You know what? I got to give it a shot." And so he loads his donkey or whatever he has, his old rickety cart, takes a few shovels, whatever he can amass, and he sets off for the king's palace, which of course you can imagine is not the easiest thing to do, to start digging at the foundation of the king's palace. Right? A little bit of, the Secret Service came over kind of quick and said, "Dude, what are you doing here?" So they come rushing over, and he has this conversation with the guard. He says, "I had this dream, and that there's a treasure. Please, won't you let me dig here and to see if in fact there is? I'll be more than happy to give you your commission." So the guy says to him, "You can't dig here, but you should know that for the last few nights, I've had this dream that there was this peddler, this poor guy from a number of miles away who couldn't make ends meet, and there was this treasure in his backyard. And if he would just dig there, he'd have this huge treasure." He says, "Thank you very much," gets back on his donkey, goes back home, finds the place in the backyard, and lo and behold, there's the treasure. Now, I don't know if this story ever happened, but the moral of the story, the idea of the story is that oftentimes we think that everything great is out there somewhere. If I only start digging over here, if I only start digging over there, if I only talk to this one and get this one's input and this one's ideas, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be knowledgeable. Then I'll be successful. We have to remember that we have the tools. We have to remember that we have the gifts. We have to remember that everything that we need to succeed in terms of the inherent skills are already there. That's what got you this far. The only question is, can you find ways to continue to build from within to ensure that your leadership journey, which, as a reminder, this is the beginning of the rest of your life, that on this leadership journey that you are now taking or now continuing upon, that you will have the maximal benefits because you managed to leverage all the gifts that you were given, utilize all the talent around you, and found a way to use that towards your and your team's advantage to ultimately succeed.